Welcome back. Today we will be dealing with organizational development and change, block 2, organizational development. Under it, unit 5, organizational development, that is OD and overview. We will be covering the introduction part, definition, stages of organizational development, essentials for success of organizational development. Introduction. As compared to organisms, organizations also take birth and undergo similar stages like birth, survive, grow, impact the environment, stabilize after some time, and they start decaying and ultimately die. As living organisms, except the last two stages. If appropriate steps are taken, the last two stages can be avoided in case of organizations. We know that human beings are mortal, but when we are comparing it with an organization, it can be immortal by taking certain steps. And it is important because organization is just not a living being which can continue and exist forever. Only thing is that we need to have proper mechanisms to see that it functions well, because as time goes on, new technologies are coming up, rapid knowledge is there. Therefore, organization need to explore all the opportunities so that it can face the challenges in a better manner. So, definitely, due to rapid knowledge and technology explosions, many organizations are becoming unviable within no time. A number of options and new features are also available to customers. Hence, product life has shortened. Therefore, it is definitely advisable for any organization to explore, to innovate, and to see that they can adapt to the rapidly growing or rapidly developing new technology and integrate itself to the new technology so that they can survive in long term. That's why when we are comparing with, definitely when we are comparing with an organization and organism, it has these similar stages. Like the organization is also started, like the organisms are birth, then they try to survive, then the organization grow and have an impact on the environment, like they have to integrate themselves, have to have some facilities for the environment, and then they have to stabilize. If they are stabilizing and adapting the new changes in the environment, then it will be easy for the organization to sustain in the long run. We can take examples of many big organizations, like especially the Tata Group, how they have survived from generations to generations. It is only through they have explored the knowledge, they have explored the new ideas, they have explored the new technology and have adapted them. They have trained their employees and very systematically they have integrated those things to their organizations. That's why they are surviving in the long run. So, newer approaches to cost reductions, quality improvement, and delivery time reductions are posing continuous threats. Rapid changes in economic, political, and social environment are bringing new types of problems. Every organization will be facing these similar problems with related to economic, political, social environment. But the best part is who can survive that, who can take that challenge, and exploring the opportunities. The organization who can sustain these challenges will definitely survive and sustain in the long run. Therefore, these modern organizations have no options other than the to continuously strive for enhancing their coping abilities. We know that it is a well-known saying that survival of the fittest. So it is very important that we, as the organizations, has to have the coping abilities, because we know that day by day new technologies are coming up, new knowledge is coming up, new inventions are going on. The organization should have the ability to accept those things, then implement those new technologies into their organization. It is then who can be really successful. So, a variety of interventions under the organizational development are available to the modern organizations for remaining effective and growing in rapidly changing environment. There are certain techniques, there are certain interventions where the organizations need to adopt those things, where because it is necessary so that they can sustain in the long run. Therefore, there are many interventions like the organizational development interventions. So, there are some definitions of organizational development, like Warren Bennis has defined it is a response to change, a complex educational strategy intended to change the beliefs, attitudes, values, and structure of organization so that they can adapt to new technologies, markets, and challenges and the dizzying rate of change itself. We know that everything in the world that we is just, it cannot be constant like anything, and only constant is change. That means there will be changes in different phases in different manner. It is how good way the organizations are able to adapt to those changes and implement, and they can then survive. So, Richard Beckford has also defined organization development as an effort planned, organization wide, managed from the top to increase organization effectiveness and health through planned interventions in the organization's processes using behavioral science knowledge. Such efforts are usually long term, at least 2 to 3 years, action oriented rather than merely training, focused on changing attitude and or behavior through experience based learning activities primarily in a group setting, because these, as Richard Becker has defined, an effort that is planned organization wide. Yes, when we are planning, it has to be planned organization wide, where it has to come from the top. It is from the initiative of the top management to see that the organization increases its effectiveness and health through definitely planned interventions, planned programs in the organizational processes, and using behavioral science knowledge. That means behavioral science means it is an ability to study the human behavior, because the organization is definitely made up of humans who actually work with other resources to achieve the organizational goal. So it is definitely helpful to study the behavioral science, because such efforts are usually will give a fruit on long term, which is classified to 2 to 3 years, and definitely it is action oriented than just merely giving training, because only training will not at all help. Rather, it has to be seen that it has to have some impact. That is why we are referring it as action oriented, focused on changing attitude. Yes, when there is a training, if the purpose of the training is not achieved, then there is no way the training is effective. That's why than merely training focused on changing attitude or behavior through experience-based learning, because once the experience-based learning will be helping the organization to change the behavior and attitude towards positivity. And these will help the organizations to transit from one phase to another in a very smooth manners. Therefore, focused on changing attitudes or behavior through experience based learning activities, primarily in a group setting. Organizations are always functioning as a team, as a group. So, whenever an individual is working, he or she is not working alone, rather, he is functioning inside a group as a team member, as a group member. That's why it is quite and very important to say that the behavior through experience based learning activities, primarily it should be in a group setting rather than an individual setting, and the employees should understand each other, have empathy on each other, so that everybody is working together as a team member, as a group member, in order to achieve the organizational goals and to be effective and efficient in nature. Wendell L. French and Cecil H. Bell also defined organizational development as OD interventions are set of structured activities in which selected organizational units, that is, when we say selected, it is the target groups on individuals, target groups or individuals engaged with a task or a sequence of tasks where the task goals are reflected directly or indirectly to organizational improvement. Interventions constitute the action thrust of OD. They make things happen and also what's happening. So they have defined that they are a set of structured activities which is selected, in which selected organizational unit, that is some target groups or some on individuals, are engaged with a task or a sequence of tasks. They are either engaged with a task or it's a sequence of tasks where the task and goals are reflected directly or indirectly to the organizational improvement. That's why they come together and they see that there is some improvement in the organization. So these interventions constitute the action thrust of OT, and they make things happen and also see that what's happening. Uday Parekh has also defined OD as a planned effort initiated by process specialists to help an organization to develop its diagnostic skills, its coping capabilities, linkage strategies in form of temporary as well as semi-permanent system, and a culture of mutuality. So we can see that Uday Parekh has given that the process, it has been initiated by the process specialist to help organization to develop its diagnostic skills. Diagnostic skills is what is actually or why these things are happening. We need to first diagnose, then if why, then how to cope with that situation, that is coping capabilities, and then again trying to link these strategies in form of any kind of temporary or semi-permanent system and a culture of mutuality. And Thomas G. Cummins and Eder F. Hughes has defined a system-wide application of behavioral science knowledge to the planned development and reinforcement of organizational strategies, structures, and processes for improving an organizational effectiveness. Similarly, National Training Laboratories USA has defined using knowledge and techniques from the behavioral science, organizational development attempts to integrate both individual needs for the growth and development with the organizational goals and objectives in order to be more effective organizations. That is what it is important to see that the individual's goals, individual needs for the growth and development has to be integrated with the organizational goals and objectives, because this will help us or the organization to be a more effective and efficient organization. Now, these are the stages of organization development. The details of activities in each stage depend on the model being followed. There are different models which will help us to see that what are the activities in each stage, and that depends on these models. Like the three models that may be classified here, we have mentioned about three models. The first model is Lewin's change model, which have three stages. The first stage comprising of unfreezing, the second one is moving, and the third one is refreezing. When we are talking about Lewin's change model and the first stage is unfreezing, that means we are trying to see the change in any organization. We are planning for a change. We want to unfreeze those things. We want to disturb the status quo of the organizational functions because we want some kind of change in the organization. So the first stage refer to unfreezing. That means we are actually disturbing the status quo. Definitely there will be some kind of resistance at this phrase because we are trying to disturb the normal course of action in the organization. The second stage is movement. That means we have implemented the change and we are seeing how the transition from the previous one to the new one is going on. This is a movement and the change is being implemented. And the last stage is refreezing. That means we are stabilizing the change which we have implemented or which we have introduced in the organization. So the first stage is unfreezing. This is Lewin's change model. The first stage is unfreezing, where we are trying to disturb the status quo of the organization by introducing the kind of change we want to implement in the organization. The second one is movement. That means the organization is moving from the present stage to the desired stage or the desired change in the organization. And the last one is refreezing. That means we are now stabilizing the change which has been planned. The second one is the planning model with the stages. The planning model has also some stages like scouting, entry, diagnosis, planning, action, stabilizations, evaluation, and termination. So when we are trying to say that the stage begins with scouting, that means we are trying to explore what are the possibility, how the organizations can adapt to the new phase, to the new technology, to the new environment in the organization. We are trying to see that what are the effects, what are the and how it can be done. Then we need to find out the ways we want to enter into what the organization's change can be like. So we want to enter into that starting point. Then we have diagnosis. Then we need to diagnose it. Where are the problems? What is the implication of that if we implement the changes? Next, we have a planning. How or what are the strategies we have decided and were designed and how these things are need to be implemented in the organization. Then actual work begins. We start implementing the plans which are being made by the organizations to start the new process. We are actually implementing in the action stage. And once the action stage start, then we are trying to stabilize. We are trying to stabilize the change, the new environment, and after that, we are evaluating whether we are better off from the previous one, or now we are not that better off than the previous one. So we are then evaluating it and then closing it, okay, by confirming whether we are successful or unsuccessful in implementing the new model. So this is the planning model. And the third one is action research model, which specifies that or comprises some stages. Like first one, we need to identify the problem. First is problem identification. That means what is actually happening and what is the problem which the organization is actually facing. Then inviting a behavioral science expert. Yes, then we need to consult a behavioral science expert who can actually study the behavior of human beings or the employees in the organization. Then we need to interact with him, getting some solutions. Then we need to have the data gathering or preliminary diagnosis. We need to collect information and data so that we can start our preliminary diagnosis. Then the feedback to groups. Yes, feedback is quite important for groups. Then we have the joint diagnosis of the problem, action, and data gathering after action. When we give feedback to the groups, it is quite important to see that how they are implementing those things in the organization. So joint diagnosis of problems will be identified through how the teams should sit together and have a problem diagnosis. Then according to the problems which they have diagnosis, they need to have an action and data gathering after the action. So these are the stages of organizational development, where basically we have three models. First one is Lewin's change model. Second one is planning model, and the third one is action research model. So in Lewin's change model, there are actually basically three stages. First is unfreezing, movement, and rephrasing. And in the planning model, we have these stages like first one is scouting, entry, diagnosis, planning, action, stabilization, evaluation, and at last termination. And the action research model says that it comprises the stages like we have to first identify the problem, then inviting a behavioral science expert, data we have to gather, then preliminary diagnosis, feedback to the groups, and joint diagnosis of problems, then action and data gathering after action. Now, stages for organizational development, we have more clarity on the stages in the following OD efforts. That means a large organization have been shown in this figure. You can see that there is some kind of initiation. Then we need to diagnosis or diagnose. Then we need to plan and design of that interventions. Then evaluating the results, how best these interventions work, and then termination or ongoing or going for the next phase. That is what is important when we are trying to initialize any stages in organizational development work. First, we need to see that how best way we can initiate that, and we need to diagnose the problems associated with. We need to foresee the future and just have ample information, ample knowledge that how we are going about with this project or the new ones which we are implementing. So we need to diagnose it. Then we need to have proper planning and designing of these interventions. Then after planning and design, you need to carry out the plans of making the interventions. And then once it is being implemented, then we need to evaluate the results and how best way these organization has employed and how they are performing. And at last, the termination or going for the next phase. So the first one is initiation. The stage consists of the following substages. First one, feeling the need. That means organizational development efforts are mainly initiated when first a top management person feels the need. When the top management feels that something change or something new is required for the organization. Then next point is when the organization is doing very bad, and sometimes when organization is also doing very good. Usually organizations who are doing very bad take up these OD interventions to help them and to come back to the mainstream again. So when next one is the organization was striving to define the its vision and mission for coping with the future challenges. Every organization will be defining its vision and mission. Vision is always linked to the long term aspect, and mission is always linked to the short term aspect. There will be definitely one vision for any organization, but there will be many missions for an organization. Missions are usually short term in nature, and visions are usually long term in nature. There will be many visions to achieve, so that if you are achieving the missions, you are able to achieve the vision also. So therefore, in short, you have to first achieve your missions so that you can go ahead and achieve your vision too. So the organization, that's why the point came here, the organization was striving to define its vision and mission for coping with the future challenges. So it is felt by seeing other organizations, especially competitors, growing and prospering. Next point, when they were making mistakes, or when they were just making some strategies for turnaround, or when a consultant make presentation giving success stories of other companies. Yes, when you get a story from the other companies about the success and how best way they have implemented those strategies, we try to adopt that. And it is also felt by seeing that other organization, especially competitors, growing and prospering. It will definitely tell the organizations who are the competitors. When the organizations see that their competitors are just growing and prospering, then definitely they will feel that it is required for the organization to do something new so that their customers are attracted to this organization also. And at last, when somebody at the lower level has to make efforts for convincing the senior management, because unless the CEO is convinced and assure active support, OD activities cannot be initiated. It is always from the top where they need to have an initiation. So initiation stage first one is feeling the need. That means organizations development efforts are mainly initiated when a top management. That's what I'm saying, that it is always the top management here has to take an initiative for the OD interventions adoptions. Next stage is inviting consultants. That means once the need is felt that something has to be done, consultants are to be invited. And these consultants may be your internal consultants or external consultants who will be responsible for the change implementation. So, due to low knowledge level of clients, sometimes consultants who have a good name in management field but are not expert in organization development get an entry. Therefore, selecting a consultant for an organization development is quite very important, because when you are there and have a good name in management field but are not an expert, you will definitely get a chance because you are not getting some senior consultants. Then is organizational development is a behavioral science approach. Hence, the first requirement is that the consultant should possess an in-depth process skill, understanding behavioral process. So, accredited behavioral process facilitator, therefore, is the most desirable requirement. This is more so because organizations' development approaches are largely based on the process consultancy. Next is the stage for identifying and clarifying the needs. Interaction may be held with the chief of the organization and a few other top management persons for identifying and clarifying the need. For clarifying the need, a number of methodologies may be used, like we have the environmental analysis, like internal and external, the SWOT analysis. The SWOT can be replaced as SWOC also, like S stands for strength, W stands for weakness, O stands for opportunities, and T stands for threats. The T can be replaced by C with the challenges. So these environmental analysis, we have a pestle analysis also, where we are screening the environment. Then we have scenario building, developing mission, vision, values, and strategies, comparison with the competitors, and etc. So success stories of successful organizations and satisfaction surveys are also sometimes used to see that how best way we can clarify these needs, these interactions. So it is definitely important to see that the chief of the organization and other top management persons are there for identifying and clarifying the need. Then it is exploring readiness for change. In spite of strongly felt need, it is quite essential to explore the readiness of the organization to change, because it is the human resources who are the part and parcel of the organization. And resistance to change or resistance there will be there in case of anything new is introduced to the organization, because no one in the organization want to leave the comfort zone or whatever they are practicing each day every day. A process facilitator may call a meeting, workshop of senior people on the basis of observation on the interaction. He can get an idea of the readiness to change. He can get or when too much fascination for the status quo, that means that they don't want to change, is sensed. If during this process, if too much of status quo is there and they do not want to change, then fear and apprehensions are strongly expressed. Then case of failure are cited more than the success stories. Resource scarcity is repeatedly presented. ORI intervention should not be initiated in a hurry. Which is what they are saying, that OD interventions should not be conducted in a hurry process. Rather, time should be given and it has to be done in a very smooth manner. Next step is formulate contract. The role of the consultant and the client and objective of the resources are required by the consultant, the outcome desired by the client, all the important aspects are clarified, and then an MOU. MOU is Memorandum of Understanding or contract between the client and the consultant is formulated for carrying out the OD interventions. Financial implications should also be clarified at this point. Next stage is the diagnosis. So in this stage of organizational development, it is the process of assessing the functioning of the organization or departments to deliver the maybe functioning of organizations where it is very much necessary, or the process will have an important way to assess the functions of the organization or department to discover sources of the problems and areas of improvement, that is which is given by Cummings and Hughes in 1989. So this stage consists of some of these sub stages. Like first one is problem identification, that is that the preliminary problem may be of many types. Like problems are situations in which we experience uncertainty or difficulty in what we want to achieve, and this is the problems where we arise, or when some obstacles prevent us in reaching the desired objectives. So this stage will include gathering as well as analysis of information on the organization's activities and performance. So first stage under this diagnosis is one has to identify the problems. So and these problems will be of, definitely a variety of problems will be there. So problems are situation in which we experience some kind of uncertainty or difficulty in what we want to achieve, because when we are planning something and we feel that some problems are there, we will not be able to achieve the desired goal. So problems arise when obstacles prevent us in reaching the desired objective. So this stage includes gathering and analysis of information on the organization's activities and performance. So this can be done by going through various reports, including annual reports, types of grievances raised, industrial relations related to data, etc. Then most important data comes through this discussion with senior management and personal trade union leaders, workers, middle management, and supervisory levels. So definitely the important data will come when you are discussing with all these persons like the senior management, personal trade union leaders, workers, middle management, and the visionary leaders who are part and parcel of the organization. So companies try to identify the problems by a SWOT analysis, that is strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat. Some make comparison with competitors and identify problem areas, and some techniques like focus groups and the play card method can also be used in this process. In OD, organizational diagnosis is a collaborative process between organizational members and OD consultant, leading to collection of relevant information, analysis, and drawing the inferences, that is the conclusion for planning actions and interventions. There will be a number of diagnostic models explained the characteristics of organizational diagnosis, but the system model showing organization as an open system is quite fundamental. Apart from these or the three components, that is your input, processing, and output. So this is a system model where you can see the input, is then following the processing, followed output and the outcome. Then overally we will have a feedback system. That means first something is being told, then it is being processed, then what will be the output, certainly an outcome will come after some time between the output and outcome, and then finally the feedback. So these feedback and interaction with boundary is also very important from diagnostic point of view. It is quite important. In depth, diagnosis can be designed to the critical problem areas identified in the previous steps. However, normally organizational system can be diagnosed at three levels. The diagnosis may focus on any one or all of the components, such as each level with organization levels, like we have goals, policies, strategy. Then under this is actually under the organizational level. Then again we have under the group level, like organizational design and norms. Then at individual levels we have, first one is work group, design, then personal characteristics of employees, and etc. Next one is design of data collections or survey. So a variety of data collection method may be used for the purpose, like some may use a questionnaire, interviews, and observation. Questionnaire mean you will have number of questions where you need to assign certain points associated with that concerned question. Then individual interviews can be conducted, like when the employees can be interviewed, like how this data are to be collected. Then next one is your observation. Observation means by observing the environment, we need to collect the data. And once these data are collected through questionnaires, interviews, observations, we need to analyze those data. That means we need to analyze it and have some findings on that or some inferences. So the data which has already been collected through various techniques, like maybe questionnaires, interviews, observations, are now has to be analyzed and give certain meaning to that analysis or certain findings from that analysis. So data collected has been collected through various techniques are again to be analyzed systematically. A number of statistical methods like frequency diagrams, we can tell about the scatter diagrams, run charts, correlations, regression analysis are definitely useful for quantitative analysis. And when we are talking about the qualitative analysis, it is maybe techniques like force field method, fishbone diagrams, that is where you need to find out the root cause analysis, affinity diagrams, why diagrams, how diagrams are again very useful. So, sharing of diagnosis and feedback OD will differ from one interventions in one way, that the data after analysis is feedback to the population from where it has been collected. For this, survey feedback meetings are generally organized where the analysis of the data is collected is presented. So the audience is encouraged to give their comments or any kind of reactions. It serves two purposes. The credibility of the OD group is established because they are showing what they have collected and analyzed and inferred. Inferred means they have given certain conclusions. It also provides opportunity for seeking any kind of clarifications and supplementary data to test the inferences. And this is definitely very powerful interventions because the person get a picture of the organizational issues or perceptions and feedback on the individual and groups. Survey feedback intervention includes of collection of data, information about the organization and giving some feedback in the form of data or information to the managers and employees so that they can definitely diagnose the problem and help actions plans for solving them. Generally, questionnaires, standard or customs are designed, are used for data collections because when the organization is giving back the feedback in form of data and information to the manager and employees so that they can able to diagnose the problem and develop action plans for solving them, because once the problems are identified we need to develop those, we need to have some solutions. To have solutions we need to have a proper planning process, so we need to develop those solving techniques also. The so silent feature of these findings are shared with people. Definitely, once the feedback are analyzed, the features, the silent features of the findings are shared with people in groups, starting from the top management to the lower levels. Both content and process observations emerging during this sharing sessions are noted down, and further clarity is obtained by seeking more data whenever required. And definitely there will be certain kind of precautions to be taken while interacting, like mostly those which are taken care of while giving feedback to an individual. The analysis should represent the reality, raise some anxiety, and be descriptive rather than evaluative, because it is very much necessary to be descriptive rather than evaluative. Next one is planning and design of interventions. An intervention is a set of structured activities in which selected target group, that is any individual, groups or organizational unit, engage with a task or sequence of tasks where the task goals are related directly or indirectly to organizational improvement. It is quite necessary to see that when the intervention, we know that intervention is a set of structured activities which is selected to a target group, that may be an individual or a group or an individual or national unit, engage with a task or a sequence of tasks where the task or goals are related directly or indirectly to the organizational involvement, which is given by French and Bell in 1983. So, in other words, we can say that OD interventions refer to a planned or a range of planned programmed activities in which people actually participate during the course of a formal OD event. The interventions are focused on individual, that means dyad, triads, teams, and total organization. So some of these are enumerated in the coming up table number 4. Here we can see levels of OD interventions. Then in the first heading, you can see level of interventions and the interventions on the right side. When we talk about the individual, the intervention says about the education, training for improving knowledge, skills and attitudes, coaching and counseling, sensitivity training, or the T group training. When we are talking about diets and triads, we are talking about the interventions like we can use the help of interviews for problem diagnosis and action planning, process consultation, that is for interpersonal relation and communication, and conflict resolution. Then, when we are talking about the intervention levels of group and team, first one intervention should be the ability for team building, because only then you will have a good relationship with the organization and the team. So, first one is team building, second one is improving communications, third one is survey feedback, and last one is conflict resolution. Next, talking about the teams and groups, where we will have the interventions like conflict resolutions and organizational mirroring. So, under last but not the least, on organization, the intervention can be like MBO, that is management by objectives, QWL, quality of work life, then TQM, total quality management, strategic planning, then change with the components like values and beliefs with culture including in it. So the activities under these planning, design, and intervention stage are briefly enumerated as first one, selecting the areas for improvement. First, we need to select the area. That means select the gray area where we want to actually implement and see certain improvement in that area. So after sharing the feedback, the working team of the OD, that is organizational development, sits together and then they start prioritizing the areas for improvement. They will be scrutinizing all the things and they will be trying to find out, they will try to have a brainstorming sessions to find out and prioritize the areas for improvement. Example, after diagnosis and feedback, the following areas were identified for work in one company. This is just an example, like we need to focus on achievement, teamwork, participation, raising quality awareness. This is what is an example where after all these diagnoses, they have found that it is lacking regarding the achievement, regarding the teamwork, how best way and how cohesiveness is there between the team members, then the participation and raising the quality awareness. So these have to be looked into this organization. So the areas are not selected randomly. Involvement of top management and some representatives of the involved areas is definitely essential at this stage. Next one is setting goals. So these OD interventions are definitely a time bound. There will be certain time frame in which these OD interventions have to be completed. It cannot just go an open-ended interventions. So what output or else any kind of outcomes are expected in each of the selected areas definitely need to be clearly identified, and they should be specific, measurable, like flexible and time bound. The criteria for understanding and the assessing the accomplishment of goals and methods of assessment and measurement should also be developed before making the intervention, because if you are not setting the goals of audio interventions, then it is impossible for anyone to achieve anything. So definitely it is time bound and the outcomes are expected in each selected areas need to be clearly identified, because if it is not clearly identified, then how it can be measurable? So definitely they should be quite specific in nature. It should be definitely measurable, quantitative, and flexible, and it should be the very most important that it should be time bound. Next is developing alternative strategies. That is, interventions for achieving the goals. Alternative interventions are to be designed. Some interventions may be common for all or many goals, and some may be specific to one or few goals. Second one is selecting alternative strategies. That means each of the proposed alternatives are evaluated quite carefully to select the most appropriate one. Some of the appropriate interventions will be situationally determined, but considering the following aspects will definitely be helpful. Like the first aspect, like the key variables in the relationship that will determine the success or failure of the intervention. The next one, the behavioral science theories and concept which will be in used in the process of understanding the organization. Next one, the basic elements of the organization, that is the health, the culture, the climate of the organization, the environment, the colleagues, the teammates, and the intervention techniques. That means how, like T groups, team building, organizational mirroring, confrontation sessions to be very well used so that it can help the organization to solve its problems. There should be a complete agreement on the interventions which is selected and the resources and the competencies available to be made should also be considered. Next one is to develop implementation plan. That means a plan for implementation of the intervention should be chalked out at early, identifying the activities, lead persons, the facilitators, resources required, help required, and the most important is the time frame. So carrying out the plan, that means making interventions. So these stages consist of some sub stages, like the first one, preparing the team for carrying out the interventions. A team of both internal resource persons are quite prepared. Ideally, this is a multidisciplinary team which would make the interventions and help in its successful implementation. So, this internal resource persons should be quite skilled in human process facilitations and should have undergone intensive training programs. Next one is conducting the activities. Whatever interventions have been planned are to be implemented. In many areas, employed would definitely pose some kind of resistance which is to be overcome. If the approach appears to be quite inadequate or inappropriate, amends are to be definitely made. The experience are to be documented, highlighting both process and the content aspects. So regular interactions with the committee, task force, members, consultant is quite very essential. Next one is mid-course evaluation. That means after interventions which have been made in periodic evaluations is required for ascertaining whether these interventions are bringing desired results. If yes, then further follow-up is definitely required. If not, it must first be examined whether these interventions have been made as per the plan or not. If these interventions have been made as per the plan but are not giving the desired results, the causes has to be examined, and if need, alternative intervention should be designed and then introduced again. Then comes evaluating the results. After all the interventions have been made, the results should definitely be evaluated. The criteria which has been developed earlier should be used as the reference points a variety of methodologies such as comparison of actual results like tangible with the planned results, interviews and surveys through questionnaire and workshop may be used as per the need. The member of the OD task force jointly with definitely with the top management and the consultant should decide the future course of action. Next one is terminating. That means OD intervention should be terminated after achieving the desired result. Termination should be done in definitely a planned manner. If the organization decides to go for the next phase, again the cycle should be repeated. These are the essentials for the success of organizational development. First is the perception of the organizational problems by the top management. Next one is the acceptance of the fact by the top management. That is the CEO, that his primary accountability is definitely profit, but his primary responsibility is also organizational development, that is OD. A belief in this applied behavioral science profession and willingness to invite a consultant. Next one is active involvement and support from the top management. Fifth one is willingness to do action research, that is conceptualizing, implementing and evaluating. Sixth one is patience in waiting for results, that is adequate awareness of processes and emphasize on improvement of process aspect. Seventh one is octopus, that is openness, confrontation, trust, authenticity, proaction, autonomy, collaboration and experimentation. Next one, eighth one is success in initial OD efforts. Next is believe in training and development. Next one is involvement of line managers and HR managers. Next is identify and development of internal resource person. Next is willingness of the members of the organization to change their thoughts and feelings as a result of OD efforts. A belief in searching for better way of doing, that is managing and adaptability to change. Next one is intervention should aim at change in the organizational climate, environment as well as the social process within the organization. Now last one is the continuity of OD efforts even after the change in the top management. Thank you very much. See you in the next class.